No waifu on the box! How can this be allowed? Today we have the Tanchjim for you on the Superchunk Super Audio Show. The For You is Tanchjim's latest take on the sub $100 IEM, and this time around features switches, but not the same fiddly kind of switches that you see on KZs. Instead, they opted for a rotary design, but you still have to use a tool to change the modules, so it's still a little fiddly. Unboxing the For You features Tanchjim colours of white and silver or grey, keeping to its brand theme. At the front of the box, they really want you to know that they have this 4-level adjustment filter thingy on it as well. At the back of the box shows a few curves that illustrate the differences between each switch. I largely agree with their curve as it mostly serves as a bass augmentation switch. Inside the box are the IEMs and a cute message to avoid damaging your earphones by dropping them. I wonder who would do such a thing. Underneath that, you get a pouch with 2 different ball ear tips that are clear, matching the aesthetics of the Tanchjim. Literature that no one ever reads. There is one important nugget here. There is the tool to switch the tuning. Please do not lose this or you have to find another way to switch the switches. Under that, you get the cable itself. Build quality. The For You is certainly solidly built. They survived multiple drop tests and clearly fared very well on the sit test because it's simply made of metal. Made of metal, they have a very sturdy hand feel and can certainly take a lot of beating. On the faceplate side of things, you have a glossy section that is a bit of a scratch magnet, so if you are sensitive to such things, you might want to baby them a little bit more. There is no getting around this unless you put some sort of sticker on them. The nozzle is on a raised section of the chassis which aids in the comfort of the For You. Otherwise, it would be a little bit too short and short things find it hard to be inserted into a hole. In this instance, your ear canal. The For You has a 2-pin termination, making them viable for cable swaps. Tanchjim states that the cable is copper plated silver, but I think this is a typo, as if it were, the cable would cost more than the IEMs themselves. This is more likely to be a silver plated copper cable. The cable here is terminated to a 3.5mm. So sound. Let's address the elephant in the room, the rotary tuning switch thingy. Firstly, the switch does not change the tonality of the IEM. The character of the driver does not change one bit, only the levels of bass. This makes it essentially a bass selector. On the atmosphere mode, which you activate by having the switch pointed to the nozzle, you get the most bass. This is the mode of which I will base my review on, as this is the stock option. One step up, the pop mode, you get reduced bass but still plenty to be enjoyable. Turning the switch again on natural, you get even less bass than pop, but I found that it's still pretty sufficient. And lastly, on the monitoring mode, you get the least amount of bass. This is the mode that I do not really recommend, as to pull off such a lean monitoring signature, you need enough resolution for the music to sound interesting. Resolution on the For You is above average on the whole and in line with expectations in its price range. The For You is a noob-friendly listen, as it is relatively easy to drive and will sound optimal with almost any dongle out there. It is also plenty smooth and one that you can have a great time very easily. The For You features a V-shaped signature with a minor emphasis on the upper mids to make them sound a little bit more exciting. Also, just to add, the atmosphere tuning has the best balance in terms of tone. Bass. The For You is a balanced sounding earphone. That is to say, the bass quantity isn't the most massive but remains a good quantity, just not to levels of how Basshead likes things. You know, this rock the room, it's not that sort of bass. Sub-bass is well controlled on the For You, but you will not experience a ground-shaking rumble on the For You. Instead, it keeps things in control. I like how the bass is punchy despite it not being huge in quantity. Mid-bass, likewise, isn't the most prominent, but I found that it keeps good levels in the mix to add impact to the overall signature. Bass resolution and texture remains average and is overall a clean listen. Although not the most resolving, what is good about the bass on the For You is that you will experience no bleed into the mid-range. And this in turn maintains a clean overall listen. Transient-wise, the For You isn't the speediest sounding, but it is more than capable of taking on most music. Dynamics here are quite average as well. I just wish that it had a bit more, as that will make compressed music sound better. Mid-range, the overall tonal weight of the 4U is that it is largely a natural sounding IEM that has a tinge of warm coloration, making it a more enjoyable listen. With a slight upper mids emphasis, the vocals of the 4U are the highlight and will be the center of attention when listening to them. They are slightly elevated, which gives them a little more definition. Female vocals benefit a little more than male vocals here as they sound more focused. Male vocals are not as full sounding as they aren't as supported by the lower mids, but I found them to be still of good quality. Instruments have good definition here and remains largely clear enough. Resolution again is above average, making them enjoyable. However, I do find that they lack a bit in terms of micro detail. Treble performance is good with a reasonable amount of air. Treble extension is decent. I never found them to be sibilant at all, and they maintain a rather polite character. I like how it synergizes with the mid-range quite well, and it is essentially seamless between the mid-range and treble. Soundstage, when it comes to width and height, the 4U renders width and height quite averagely. The lack of micro details here prevent it from sounding a little larger. Depth and positioning, again, really average in both depth and positioning. Dynamics are quite middling, hampering greater depth perception. Positioning remains good, however, can be a little better with a little more micro details. And of course, the review is meaningless if you don't compare them to other such earphones. So firstly, versus the DUNU Titan S2. Both the DUNU Titan S2 and the 4U share similarities by having one dynamic driver powering them. Technically, both the 4U and Titan S2 are pretty similar. The difference between how these two sound is that the Titan S2 has a bit more upper mids compared to the 4U. If you like a little more emphasis on female vocals, the Titan S2 would be my pick, but then again, this signature is quite commonplace. The 4U is a little more interesting as you can change your bass response by having more or less depending on your preference on the rotary switch thingy. Just change that. It does not have as much elevated upper mids, but still plenty enough to be enjoyable. So next up, versus SIMGOT EA500LM. The SIMGOT EA500LM is the darling of 2023, and for good reason. It still has exceptional resolution in its price range and a refined tuning compared to the original EA500. The EA500LM out-resolves the 4U when it comes to resolution. Although it does not have the same energetic upper mids as the EA500, it still has more than the 4U. The 4U wins when you're looking for a more relaxed sounding IEM, one where you can just simply switch your brain off and listen to music. Next up, some likes and dislikes about the Tanchjim 4U. I admire Tanchjim for keeping a consistent branding with the 4U, still doing things in their own increasingly iconic white and grey. The inclusion of the rotary switch that makes a difference in bass is also great for folk who wants to mix things up a bit. Build quality here is also pretty solid on these as well. But next, let's move on to things that I don't really fancy on the 4U. The one thing that I wish for the 4U to do better would be to have more micro details. I just felt that it would be a little bit more complete. So now, ratings. Is this a blind buy, one to seriously consider buying, one to try first, or one to just simply donate it to your enemies? The 4U is quite interesting and can appeal to people newer to the game who want options to augment bass with the turn of a switch. It is overall a very solid offering from Tanchjim, and I would rate it between seriously consider buying or try first. This is a solid model, but at the sub $100 price point, it is getting a little crowded with lots of strong releases these days. And finally, in conclusion, at the end of the day, Tanchjim did create a solid IEM that would be a serious IEM for folks who wants to get their hands on a first IEM. The 4U is certainly an interesting one to start with, as it is relatively easy to drive and one can get the best out of them really easily. Once again, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Superchunk Super Audio Show. If you like the content so far, please kindly press the like and subscribe button somewhere down below. It will help me out immensely. Also, if you guys are watching in the US, I will be heading there for CanJam SoCal. So if you are there, do drop by and say hi. I would be very happy to meet you guys. I always like meeting people in person. With that said, I hope to see you guys soon.